Cary Harrison with you, asking you what would you do if you found out that not one but two of your relatives had been killed in a mass shooting right here in America. Well, we have a hip-hop artist who found out exactly that and has come up with a solution that may very well impact future would-be shooters. Plus, Greg Palast, The Guardian USA's new special investigative reporter, looks at cause and effect in a world that seems to be spinning endlessly out of control. All straight ahead.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top-secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Journalism is about telling the truth, all while ferreting out the bottom line.
But that doesn't answer my question. That is all I'm answering.
With me, Cary Harrison, as your guide.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
You know, it's a very fine line between Greg Palast, who became an internationally successful, best-selling author and filmmaker, and Steve Paddock, the shooter, gunning people down. And the answer is time. Luck was part of it, but also the fact that I had found this way out and had people grab my hand and pull me out. Otherwise, I'd have just been an angry and dangerous person. I can tell you that.
Cary Harrison with you, and we just enjoyed a great conversation with Jevon Lamar, a man who's got extraordinary talents in hip-hop, in music, in storytelling, and of course had a direct relative who, relatives plural, who were killed in the mass shootings in Dayton, Ohio. Next to me is Greg Palast. Almost needs no introduction because he is ubiquitous for his good works, whether it's with the BBC, whether it's with The Guardian. It doesn't really matter. Without him, we wouldn't even have known about what went on in Florida in 2000, all the way up to all the voter oppression, suppression, call it whatever you want. It's happening everywhere. And The Guardian USA has hired you full-time to bring forth all of the election information we're going to be needing. But we're going to go back in time just a little bit, Greg.
Yes.
Because here you are in Ohio, very important point, doing this exact work, and your path crosses with Jevon Lamar.
That's right. I was making a film about how Donald Trump was going to steal the election. And no one listened to me. No, you didn't pay attention, okay? You didn't pay attention. I said, Trump's going to steal the election. Let's do something about it, in particular in Ohio, which is very important, the ultimate swing state. So I was in Dayton, Ohio. You have to understand, a devastated city. That's really important to understand. But I knew that there was massive, you can't, as I explained in the film, which I made with Jevon Lamar, that you can't take away people's jobs, which is what happened in Dayton. Massive unemployment. It is the poorest city in America, major city in America. It has massive unemployment. The housing market has collapsed. You can buy a house there, by the way, for $22,000 with 3 bedrooms, but you wouldn't want to because there's no work. There's nowhere to go. There are thousands and thousands of foreclosed homes. This is the place where Jevon came from. And it was Thanksgiving evening. Okay, we're filming and in Dayton, and we just have to reach people, and it's like 3 a.m. Thanksgiving, and this poor guy is working at a steak and brew. Everyone else is frankly kind of stoned, and he's the one guy. He has all this energy at 3 a.m. I said, "Do you want to be here on Thanksgiving?" He says, "No." I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" Because he had all this just exciting energy, and he was talking to me, and you could see that this guy was literally just exuding art and creativity. And he said, "No, what I want to do is go to Hollywood to practice and work on my art as a hip-hop artist." And so I made him a deal he couldn't refuse. I said, "Well, guess what? It's 3 a.m. in Dayton on Thanksgiving." I said, "I'm going to give you a ticket to Hollywood Burbank Airport. And we're going to bring you to Hollywood."
Well, that way he wouldn't have to deal with the traffic at the parking.
Right. So I just said, "But you're going to become a producer on a film and you're going to work like a dog. Like it'll be like slavery will seem pretty easy. And he did. He worked like an animal to get the word out, because it was about finding those victims in Dayton, in his community.
Yeah.
To get them on camera, to find the people who lost their jobs. At like his own father lost his job at Delphi Auto Parts, which is part of General Motors. The whole plant was shut down by financial vultures, which we explain in the film. We meet the auto workers, black and white, who lost their jobs. Jevin found these people for us, and it's not easy to convince people to go on camera, by the way. And then also with it, as we say, you can't take away someone's job. You can't take away someone's house. No community in America was as devastated as Dayton by the housing collapse. Still today, half the homes in Dayton are in foreclosure.
Right, and in places that did have that problem, whether it's Florida or even Las Vegas, total rebound.
And not in Dayton, because what's happened is they took away their jobs, they took away their homes, and I said, in order to do that, they have to take away your vote. So it was also Jevin going through the community and finding people whose votes were illegally stolen from them, and meeting some very powerful people. But let me tell you, for those who see the films that you think, oh, it's easy, Greg Palast does all this investigative reporting. I'm the nose on camera, but it's people like Jevin, my producers, who are out there. And he was out there 2 months pounding the pavement to find people to get the scenes to set up the shooting. He had to make this happen, this film happen in Dayton, and it was extraordinary. And so he more than deserved. And then, of course, I start getting his music tracks, and people in Hollywood are going wild with it. And when the Dayton shooting happened, actually, I happened to be on the phone with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And it was really emotional. I mean, we were in Switzerland because I was actually
getting married.
I got married 2 days earlier. And he was there. It was Jevin's birthday when he gets the message that actually 2 of his cousins were gunned down, especially very close TJ. And he kind of said, what do I do? And I said, well, you're a hip-hop artist, write the song.
Cary Harrison with you, along with Greg Palast. You're watching Pirate TV for Free Speech Television. You're also hearing this on various radio stations, possibly even as a podcast as well. And we're talking about the great up-and-coming Jevin Lamar, hip-hop artist extraordinaire, whose EP 6 singles that we just premiered here are going through the roof, along with his appearance on the Grammys and all these other dreams having come true. And Greg, you've been talking about how you were mentored and given a hand up out of a horrible place with no future. And I think it's important to talk about when people feel they have nothing to lose, they do horrible things.
People are downwardly mobile. And one of the things you have to understand, and you see in our film that we did together, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, is that there's a hopelessness. In other words, Dayton is a city where they took away people's hope. They took away the jobs. And so this kid, he came from a somewhat privileged family, but he was downwardly
We're talking
mobile.
about the shooter.
The shooter was in a privileged, had come from a fairly privileged family, union wages, etc., out of the GM plant. But the kid himself had no future, was going nowhere, no chance in Dayton, none. And it leads to loneliness, it leads to tragedy. Some people are going to snap. And you have to understand the reason, and I understand this completely, because of where I came from. I came from the very poor end, the ass end of Los Angeles. Literally, it's where the sewage plant is. It's the anus of Los Angeles, because that's where your poop comes out. And I was between the sewage plant and the garbage dump and the power plant. And that's where I grew up. And most of us were expendable. Most of us, no view, because as you said, at that time, 50 years ago, you couldn't see the mountains.
Right.
And we didn't stand a chance. We were supposed to go to Vietnam, and if we kept both of our legs, we could work at the GM plant, but then the GM plant went to Mexico after NAFTA. And I lucked out. I mean, some kids didn't luck out. To my classmate, who sat next to me, because his name is Steve Paddock, and my name is Palast. And he was, that's the Vegas shooter, another shooter, killed 52 people. He was my friend all through school.
Wow.
But I could see he was a genius.
Yeah.
A genius. But he had no chance. He was a math whiz, a chess guru, and yet he came in this very poor area. He didn't stand a chance to go anywhere, and that still ate at him. And yeah, he had some minor successes on and off, but in the end, he should have gone to MIT. He should have gone to Stanford. He should have had a very different life. Instead, his life was frustrated, and he took it out on himself and then, unfortunately, 52 other people. It's hard for people to understand where Jevin comes from, where I come from, where you're written off. Now, understand what happened to me is I got a mentor who helped me get work, who helped me get in, got even a professorship. I got all this help working with labor unions, etc., and ultimately becoming an investigator, then an investigative reporter, because people took me and said, okay, here's this kid from nowhere. He's smart, give him a break. And I said, a great union leader named Frank Rosen from out of Chicago, who took me in and gave me jobs and gave me work and set me off on a direction. And I just said, the one thing I've got to do is pass it on. And here was this kid at midnight or 3 a.m. On Thanksgiving in Steak and Brew. But he had the stuff, and he's proved it. And so, I mean, someone with that talent will probably always be discovered. But you have to understand, it's hard to come out of Dayton and get anywhere. Someone has to give you that break. But he had the stuff to do it. And now he's going back to Dayton to help out there and show other kids at this Dayton Daybreak, you can do it too. But there's another thing here too that he and I have been working on quite a bit, the right to vote. And as he said, he wasn't really aware of this when he first met me, and he started working on this film, and he became a fanatic. He goes around to all the churches in Dayton with copies of our film saying, you got to play this, you got to play this. It's about protecting your right to vote. You got to vote, you got to register to vote, you got to understand the issues. He's like proselytizing. If there is ever an evangelist for voting, it's Jevin Lamar, because he discovered the power of it, about taking control of your life. You take control with your music, you take control with where you live. And he said part of it was, his dream board. I had my dreams. I said, maybe one day, where I come from, you didn't become a writer, but I did it. And I'm on TV, I make films, etc. It's not what we were meant to do.
And we're talking the BBC, Greg. We're talking The Guardian. We're talking international TV. Let's take a look at a clip from The Best Democracy Money Can Buy.
My name's Palast. Greg Palast. I'm an investigative reporter. I hunt billionaires who misbehave. And every 4 years, I become a crime reporter. The crime, election theft. I hunt election thieves, vote rustlers, ballot bandits.
Investigative reporter Greg Palast wades through the dirty political tactics.
This is the story of the investigation of the theft of the 2016 election. It's a crime still in progress, and a hunt for the very rich guys behind the crime. How are they going to do it? I hadn't a clue. Then, one night, in my shitty little New York City detective agency office on 2nd Avenue, then an envelope arrived on my desk. It was the list of those Florida murderers and mobsters who had registered to vote. Nothing matched up. The names of the voters didn't match up with the names of the felons. Jonathan Barber lost his vote because Vinnie Barbieri was convicted of a crime. And Jonathan has a different birthday than Vinnie. Thousands of mismatched birthdays. Some of these criminals were convicted in the future, way in the future. And thousands never convicted at all. Something was wrong here. The voters that were purged just didn't match up with the felons. Turns out, the number of real criminals on Bush's felon list, 0. Nada. Bupkis. But look at this. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 huh? Most of the innocent folks who lost their vote were marked BLA, black, like this guy, Willie Steen. He lost his vote because some other guy named Willie Osteen was convicted of a felony in Ohio.
No criminal at all. Never been convicted of any crime. I've never been arrested in my life.
So I went to Catherine Harris's office to show her elections chief their phony little felon list. But suddenly, he had to go.
And I think I'm done with this interview.
Cary Harrison with you on Pirate TV, here on Free Speech Television, talking to BBC's Greg Palast, who is now full-time Guardian USA, going state by state by state to uncover, unravel, and expose Herculean volumes of voter fraud, voter suppression, full-on disenfranchisement systemically, institutionally, of tens of millions of Americans from their right to vote, all being done under the covers, and he's here to uncover it. You can always get more at Guardian USA or at gregpalast.com.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
And Greg, you've been talking about how you were mentored and given a hand up out of a horrible place with no future. And I think it's important to talk about when people feel they have nothing to lose, they do horrible things.
Yeah, you have to have something to lose. And I think when we see these shooters, we talked about, Jevin talked about mental health problems, that they needed some love, they needed some direction. But also they need to see that there was a chance, that they had something to lose, that you could get somewhere. But it can't just be phony. You can't just tell people, oh, come on, you'll be okay. No. Steve Paddock, this Vegas shooter, my friend, no, he was a genius who was frustrated, never got to use his genius. Jevin Lamar is a guy who is getting to use his genius. You know, I wrote a piece about Steve Paddock and the killings in Vegas. And I said, you know, it's a very fine line between Greg Palast, who became an internationally successful, best-selling author and filmmaker, and Steve Paddock, a shooter. And I had an editor who didn't want to run that. He says, no one will believe that a guy is an internationally successful investigative reporter could end up on some hotel room gunning people down. And the answer is time, luck was part of it, but also the fact that I had found this way out and had people grab my hand and pull me out. Otherwise, I'd have just been an angry and dangerous person. I can tell you that right now. I don't know how it ended up. Maybe with a spike in my arm in a gutter. I don't know. But all I can tell you is that someone giving me a chance. And Dayton needs a chance. And that's one of the problems, is that they take away chances when they take away your vote, because they take away your right to take control of your own life and your own destiny. And that's why Jevin's become like this crusader for the vote, and in both his art and now working with us on the films. And he'll be working with us on the films we're going to be doing all year for the Guardian newspapers. Investigative reporting when they try to steal the vote. We're the journalistic cops on the beat to stop the vote theft.
Well, let's not assume, Greg Palast, that absolutely everyone understands that their votes are being stolen. It's not in the local paper. It's not on the TV news. We had the president announce that millions, hundreds of millions of votes were fraudulent. I think there's two people, but it's not connected to that. But let's talk about what's actually going on.
Yes. Okay, yeah, I mean, our president said in 2016, this election is rigged. He knows because he rigged it with his buddies, and that's what I uncovered. I start out, by the way, I'm back with The Guardian, but 20 years ago when I was just starting out as an investigative journalist, I went to The Guardian, and they were the only ones on this planet who would run the story about what really happened.
Based in England.
In England. The London Guardian used to be called the Manchester Guardian, now they're in London. That BBC Television and The Guardian hired me to tell the story of what really happened in the 2000 election, when tens of thousands of black people were removed from the voter rolls of Florida on the grounds that they were felon, mother stabbers and father rapers, and they can't vote. I got those lists. I'm an investigator. I got the inside lists. And what I found out is that the 98,000 people they removed, almost all of them black people, were in fact
not a coincidence.
That they were removed on the grounds they were ex-cons. Not one 000 Bubkiss was a was an illegal voter. Everyone was a legal voter except that their only crime was voting while black. And I'm not guessing that they were black, because next to their names it said BLA, BLA. And I hate to say
Blah,
it,
blah,
when I
blah?
first got it, I said, what's blah? What's blah? What is a blah blah voter?
Yeah.
And then I realized when I saw WHI for white, that blah was black, and that's what they were going after. They weren't going after people who have criminal records. They were going after people who were voting while black. That was their crime, including one guy, Willie Steen, that I met, a really nice guy, Gulf War veteran, worked in a hospital. You can't, by the way, have a felony conviction, work in a hospital in Florida. And he took his 5-year-old son to show him America voting. This is
Right.
how, this isn't America a wonderful place with our democracy? And they said, you can't vote, you're a felon. And his 5-year-old said, Daddy, what's a felony? And that's what they did to him. And of course, no one's sympathetic to black people if they say, oh, of course they're felons.
Right.
So the Democratic Party didn't support them, whatever. But the Guardian let me run that story.
I just want to jump in because
Yeah.
I think it's important to point out the black voter is a likely Democratic voter,
Yes.
hence the deselection. If they were all Republicans, you'd probably be plus 6 million extra voters.
Right. Why am I worried about 2020? The answer is what I saw in 2018 when I started doing investigations for Rolling Stone in Georgia. And a woman named Stacey Abrams, the first black woman in American history to run for governor of any state, not just in the South. She was running for governor of Georgia. Funny thing happened. Polls said she should win. She loses by a few thousand votes. What happened? She lost to a white Republican named Brian Kemp. I bring up white because it's important. He also had a job called Secretary of State. Now, Secretary
An
of
incidental
State,
job.
Secretary of State is the guy
Yeah.
who's in charge of the voter rolls. And what he did stealthily, quietly, and by the way, illegally, was remove 340,134 voters from the voter rolls. In just Georgia, that's 1/3 of a million voters. They lose their vote. Why do you care? Well, besides it being a stolen vote in Georgia, the trick that was rolled out in Georgia in 2018 is being rolled out nationwide, about 20 states, and we're talking the swing states: Ohio, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Arizona, which should be a blue state given its demographics, but not if you keep wiping out voters. And they're not just wiping out a few voters. 14 million voters have been wiped off the voter rolls in the last 2 years. 14 million. And we figure about half of those are from people who are designated as having moved or left. This is a brand new gimmick, and they haven't. And they're going to show up to vote, and they're going to say, I've never moved. This is what happened in 2004. Hanging Chads of Florida of 2000.
Yeah.
Those are spoiled ballots. You think you voted, but the little piece of paper hung on to the end. A human eye knows that was an attempted vote. Al Gore won those Hanging Chad ballots. John Cary would have been president, except for the games played with the lines and with spoiling the ballots and throwing out the ballots in Ohio. And Donald Trump would not be president if they counted the ballots in Michigan, if they counted the ballots in Wisconsin, if they counted the ballots in Pennsylvania and Arizona and Ohio. So this is the story that we've uncovered before in 2000, 2004. And with Bobby Kennedy, I used to teach statistics of all things. We calculated very carefully how many votes were stolen in each presidential election. And it's about 5.9 million. And you're right. If it were white country club members, they would not be losing their vote. And this was 2000. George Bush, by the way, won by 537 votes, not counting tens of thousands of black men removed from the voter rolls. Now we get to 2018. Okay? So now I'm on the beat for The Guardian, as I was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm back on the beat for 2020.
Cary Harrison with you here on Pirate TV on Free Speech Television, talking to BBC's Greg Palast. He is now full-time with The Guardian USA, going state by state by state, looking at the panoply of voting issues going on. We're talking about voting theft. We're talking about ways to subordinate, to subjugate voters. We're talking about wild and huge institutional and systemic disenfranchisement of tens of millions of voters, all provably available, of course, at gregpalast.com, or more importantly and more relevantly, right now, Guardian USA.
Why am I worried about 2020? You have to know that they're stealing it to stop the thieves from stealing it. And, look, I'm going to tell you, do you want me to tell you that it's only Republicans who do this? I can't. Democrats do it too. They're not as sophisticated. They're not as good at it. But, we've talked about, for example, here in California, the People's Republic of California. It's a one-party state. So Democrats do play these games, but they mainly remove other Democrats, as we saw in California. So, for example, I'll be covering California, the primary here in California for The Guardian, the voter games. Example, Bernie Sanders in 2016 Bernie Sanders in 2016 supposedly lost by 200,000 votes. That's pretty substantial, but it's the biggest state in America.
40 million
people.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are millions of voters. What happened? Well, what they don't tell you is that 750,000 votes were never counted. I told you about those votes that get thrown away. 750,000 votes in California in the 2016 primary were never counted. Almost all of them were cast by a certain type of voter. That is what's called the independent voter, or in California they have a fancy term, no party preference voter.
Well, I found out I was an NPP.
You're an NPP.
Yes.
And you were taking your NPP and you were trying to vote, and
well,
they wouldn't let you.
Not only that, I had the Disney magic of being completely deselected off the rolls, period. And I had to go to 3 different polling stations. And because you saw
there.
part of this,
Yeah.
I took an attorney with me and forced my vote.
By the way, learn something from that. Okay, I want you to learn something from what Cary did. When they say your name's missing from the voter rolls, don't say, "Oh, I'm so too bad. I guess I'll leave." No. You get your attorney. You demand. The poll judge is usually there. You demand your rights. And by the way, that's a good reason to also vote early if you can, which you can now do in California. Now, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Very typical. The NPP voters, the no party preference, independent voters, were 3 of 4 of those independent voters were for Bernie Sanders. In California, those NPP independent voters are allowed to vote in the Democratic primary. Just don't try it. So so now, if you counted the 750,000 disqualified ballots in California, that's 750,000 ballots. 3 out of 4 preferred Sanders. You counted those ballots, Bernie Sanders won the California primary. That's the cold arithmetic. Now, how does that happen? Okay, guess what? You'll love this, and especially if you're living in other states. And if you're living in Switzerland or England, you're saying, what? If you walk into a polling station and you're an NPP voter,
Which
and
is,
say,
anywhere else would just be an independent party.
Independent, right? So you're an independent voter, say, I want a Democratic Party ballot. God forbid they give it to you. Because if they give you that Democratic Party ballot, it's thrown away because you're not a Democrat. You have to have something called a crossover Democratic Party ballot. It's the same ballot, but it says crossover at the top.
To your point, Greg Palast, it's not like it was in the newspaper or on the TV set.
They wouldn't tell you
saying,
damn
by the
thing.
way, you have to get a super secret, special kind of ballot to be able to walk across the room and use the machine.
And I can't say that the Jose Crow operation of California is equal to the Jim Crow operation of Georgia. I don't like these equivalences.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you. So I'm going to be out there. I don't care what party is stealing the vote. I don't care what party is removing voters or throwing ballots away. I'm going after them state by state. Watch me in Michigan. Watch me in Georgia. Watch me in North Carolina, California, Arizona, and watch me at The Guardian USA, Guardian.com, TheGuardian.com, or, more important, stay tuned on this podcast because I want to come back, give you reports as I'm getting them on the ground, from on the ground.
Cary Harrison here with you, and I've really enjoyed this special hour here on Pirate TV on Free Speech Television. I've enjoyed this hour with Jevin Lamar as well as Greg Palast talking about everything from civil rights to voting to mass shootings and why people do what they do. You can get a copy of this program and many other related programs simply by going to RealityCheckr.com. No E at the end, just an R. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call now.